When I heard that Aperture, nope, wrong brand. When I heard that SmallRig was entering the Video Light game, I was very curious to see if they could really compete with the likes of Aperture and maybe even Godox. And do they? Sort of. Let's get to it and find out. But before we do that, make sure you drop a like and get subscribed for all the upcoming gear reviews, like the Deity TC1, which is somewhere right here on the back of my recorder, and also the follow-up as to what's going on with the Tascam Portacapture X8, and boy oh boy, do I have some thoughts about that. Oh, and if you want, you can skip to this timestamp of the video for a no-frills TLDR of the RC220B. But if you're awesome, stick through and watch the whole video, as there's a lot to talk about with this light. All right, on with the show. So we're gonna start out with the pros of the light. So today, I'm just gonna be reviewing the RC220B from the SmallRig series of lights, as it is the most compelling value out of all of them. To start, it's got a good price coming in at $369, and it is very, very bright. Right now, I'm on the Fuji X-T4, ISO 640, aperture f4, and right now the light is at 36%, so this is kind of my idea of what you can get. And if we crank it up to 100%, yeah, this is pretty bright. Yeah, let's get back to something that makes sense. So the 220B is in a bicolor light, so it has a range from 2800 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin, which is pretty good. Like, as far as bicolor lights go, most of the time you go from 3200 to 5600, but you have that extra on each end, which gives you some extra flexibility when you're trying to white balance certain scenes depending on what your lighting conditions are, so that's pretty nice. One thing I do enjoy about the light is that the brightness increments move in 1% increments, so you can very precisely dial in your brightness, and the CCT range moves in 100 Kelvin increments when you're moving the CCT range, so both of these are pretty good, and it allows for a pretty fine-grained control, especially if you want to really dial in that brightness and white balance for whatever you're trying to light. It's pretty handy. The form factor of the 220B is pretty small. It's not as big as some of the competitor lights like the Godox SL150, but it is about the same size as the Aperture 200D and 100D lights. And that's to say it's relatively small, so it moves around really easily and it doesn't take up that big of a footprint. Okay, my last pro of the light is that the actual tightening handle for adjusting the tilt of the light is good, but it's kind of counteracted by the yoke and the actual construction of what attaches to light stand kind of being whatever. And that's gonna lead us into the cons of the light, which, yeah, there are a few. First off, out of the box, both knobs came cracked, and one of them actually came off, like all the way off. Like, first time opening the box, knob just came off. That wasn't very cool. I was able to get it back on, but to this day, these are still cracked. And as SmallRig is a, overseas-based company, RMAing and warranties is just a hassle. So I've just lived with it so far. So buyer beware. That could possibly happen when you buy these lights. Like, I bought this brand new from B&H, not a sponsor, by the way. That's just where I get stuff. It's pretty great. And I knew, well, I at least hope it wasn't on the part of B&H, but given that everything was like factory sealed, I was kind of mind boggled that the knobs were just cracked out of the box, which is kind of insane. Also, one thing I'm really not enjoying about the RC220B is that it has a plasticky build. Now, granted, most of the lights in this price range will have a plasticky build, but this one errs on the cheap side, and I can almost guarantee that it would not survive a drop. I'm thankful I haven't dropped it yet, but if I did, I'm pretty sure I'd probably have to buy another one. Funny story, no one's heard about this until now, that for the Godox SL150s that we use on every shoot, the first shoot we ever took them on, we dropped one. Yeah, we dropped it, and that has a fully metal build, and it did not survive the drop. So I am fairly certain if you drop the RC220B, it's not going to survive. Although, even though the light has a plasticky build, The light dome that it comes with has a nice metal build, and it's kind of standard as far as light domes go, because there was a point, and we all know it, where light domes all kind of became the same thing. So the light dome is fine. And oh boy, the effects on this light are annoying. I will very briefly show them, but I will warn, they are pretty seizure-inducing. Like, they're not great, they're not convincing, and there has to be some level of control that you can just not get flashed immediately with these horrible effects, especially if you happen to have the light at full brightness. It hurts your eyes most of the time these effects come on. So, annoying effects and not convincing effects, not that great. Also, I'm not sure, I'll find out in once I'm editing if this is obvious, but the fan on this light is awful. It's quite invasive. I found that between 20 and 49%, the fan will just turn on and off intermittently, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. And right now, it's the winter season, so it's fairly cold in my room. This light still turns on a lot, like in random increments, like random times, so I'll never know when it's on or off. And it's funny, because I was on a shoot where the sound guy asked, "What is that sound?" And he looked over at the light, and I was like, I'm sorry, dude. There's like nothing we could do about that. Thankfully, it did not compromise the shoot, but it is a consideration. And also, from 50% up, this light's fan will turn on and stay on. So there's not really much in the way of fan control on this light. It doesn't even have a fan off option. It's deal with the fan as is, which can be a consideration for a lot of people. So be ready for that if you plan on getting this light. Also, another point of concern, and my sample size on this is limited as the Godox lights that we use only have straight cable from the light to the wall, but this light has a 2-portion power supply where it's a cable that leads to a brick and then a cable that goes from the brick to the wall, and the power brick that's on that cable gets very hot, like hot to the touch. Now, granted, it's made of plastic, so it's not gonna exactly it's not going to burn you when you touch it, but it can be uncomfortable to touch, and it's also quite worrisome when, you know, the power supplied to your light is concerningly hot. So keep that in consideration. And so far, after about 4 months of use, there haven't been any issues, but we'll see what happens in the future. But so far, it's not so bad, but it is yet another point of concern. And finally, my biggest, and I mean my biggest gripe with the SmallRig RC220B is that it does not have any sort of remote control option. Like, the Godox lights, all the Godox lights even come with this cheapy little remote to do at least one little bit of remote control. And if you're using aperture lights, you have the amazing Situs Link app, which that's great, but this has nothing. So that means you're going to have to manually reach up to the light and turn the knobs. And frankly, that's pretty unfeasible, especially if you want to put this light somewhere for a shoot where you're not going to be able to easily reach it. There were multiple times where I've used this on a shoot, and it turns out that I need to make a specific change to the light, so I had to take it down, make the adjustment, put it back up. And, you know, we're not perfect. Sometimes you make the adjustment wrong. So I have to take it back down, make the adjustment again, which I don't want to do that over and over and over again. So that is my biggest gripe with the RC220B. And that's going to lead us to the TLDR of what's going on with the RC220B. So basically, it's very bright, it has a good price, and good CCT range, and a fine case, I suppose, as far as cases for lights go that come with them. But when you move on to those cons, things start to look pretty bad because, frankly, the Plasticky build, the quality yoke, and the lack of remote control in addition to the seizure-inducing effects. Don't forget those. But that real lack of control, remote control, is the real killer of this light. Now, for my purposes, I'm still going to use this light. It's actually going to get relegated to being my permanent studio light for in here, which is really cool. Realistically, if you're using this light in a studio setting, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you really intend on taking this out on a job, you're actually getting paid to do film jobs with lighting like this, this is not the light to take with you. Now, if you can find this on a good discount, with more competitive pricing on the sub 300, like sub 299 range, then this light honestly is a steal. But without that, I can't fathom picking this light over the Aperture 200X or even the 100X or D if you want to just do daylight. But be warned, that Aperture 200X also has a ridiculous fan, but I think I can live with a ridiculous fan for remote control. As far as this first generation of SmallRig lights go, I'm gonna have to say, for certain applications that aren't in a studio environment where you can easily reach the light, these lights are a pass. But if SmallRig can improve on these lights with a second generation with remote control, that's honestly, I can look past all these issues if they had a remote control. If they can do that, then honestly, their next generation of lights could be awesome. And at the time of review, they are releasing a new generation of lights, the 350 and 450 series, but they have a half measure, as there's a remote control that's attached to the lights. Granted, it's at least a few feet away on a wire, but it's not a full-on remote. So we'll see what SmallRig can do. Man, I really hope they get it together because this is a promising first start. Alright guys, that's going to do it for us today. This is the last video of 2022, and I hope you guys have an awesome 2023, and I hope you guys are ready for all the awesome stuff that we're going to be putting out next year. We got like 4 short films in post-production right now, so you guys are going to see so much awesome stuff in this coming year. We got a bunch of gear reviews coming, and honestly, next year, we're kicking into gear. We're going to teach you guys so much film stuff, you guys are not even going to be ready. So with that, we'll see you in the next year, and get ready for the first video of the year when Samir, this time actually, talks about his award season predictions for the movie season and what's going on with films and whatnot. That's what he talks about. So yeah, see you next week. No, see you next year.